The Last Supper is more than a simple banquet. It's an enigma full of hidden secrets waiting to be unlocked. What did Jesus really want to tell us at that decisive moment? Over the centuries, scholars and mystics have delved into forgotten texts and works of art that hold profound and often disturbing messages. Da Vinci's famous painting, for example, may contain symbols that reveal hidden truths about Jesus' identity and his message. But what if everything you think you know about this pivotal event is just the tip of the iceberg? What is hidden behind the expressions and gestures of the apostles? In the silence of unspoken words, there are clues that can change our understanding of faith. Every detail on the table, every glass, every look exchanged can have a meaning that transcends time. Get ready for an intriguing journey where we will explore mystical interpretations and surprising revelations. What can we learn from banned texts and forgotten traditions? What if these hidden truths are the key to understanding not only Jesus but also ourselves? Join us and discover what's lurking in the shadows of the Last Supper. To understand the Last Supper, it is essential to delve into the historical and cultural context of Jesus' time. The scenario was marked by political tensions, with the Roman occupation of Israel, which generated a feeling of oppression among the Jews. Furthermore, the religious environment was dominated by Jewish traditions, with Easter being a central festival which celebrated the liberation of the Hebrew people from slavery in Egypt. This atmosphere of hope and expectation permeated the lives of the disciples, who saw in Jesus a messianic figure. During Passover, Jews held a special dinner known as the Seder, which retold the story of liberation. It is in this context that Jesus met with his disciples for the Last Supper. The choice to have this meal at such a significant moment reveals Jesus' intention to associate his message with Jewish tradition. Dinner was not just a meeting between friends, but a rite full of symbolism, where each element had a deep meaning. The interactions between Jesus and his disciples during this supper reflect the social environment of the time. They were immersed in a world of expectations and uncertainty, seeking answers to their spiritual and social questions. Supper thus becomes a space of revelation and preparation for the challenges to come. Jesus knew this was a defining moment, and his words and actions would echo for centuries. This dinner took place at a time of great unrest, with Romans and local religious leaders concerned about Jesus' growing popularity. Tensions were in the air, and the Last Supper turns into an act of resistance and affirmation of faith. By gathering with his disciples, Jesus not only shared a meal, but also a legacy that would last far beyond his lifetime. Thus, when we analyze the historical and cultural context of the Last Supper, we realize that it is much more than a simple dinner. It is an event full of meaning, which encapsulates the struggle of the Jewish people, the traditions that supported their faith, and the crucial role that Jesus plays in this troubled scenario. Jesus' speeches during the Last Supper are full of meaning and depth. He institutes the Eucharist, a ritual that would become central to the Christian faith. In saying, "This is my body," Jesus does not limit himself to sharing food. He calls on his disciples to understand the surrender he was about to make. This statement provokes reflection on sacrifice and love, themes that resonate strongly in Jesus' message. The interpretation of his words over the centuries reveals how different cultures and religious traditions appropriated this moment. For many, the act of consuming bread and wine becomes a symbol of communion with God. From that moment on, the Eucharist began to be seen as a way for the faithful to connect spiritually, eternalizing the message of Jesus. Furthermore, Jesus' words at the Last Supper also carry a farewell tone. He talks about betrayal and redemption, preparing his disciples for the challenges to come. This duality between joy and sadness permeates the environment, reflecting the complexity of the message he was conveying. It is an invitation to reflect on choices and consequences, something that continues to resonate in Christian communities. Over time, different theological currents interpreted Jesus' speeches in different ways. Some emphasize the literal character of the Eucharist, while others focus on the idea of symbolism and memory. This plurality of interpretations enriches the understanding of the Last Supper, showing that Jesus' message is multifaceted and timeless. Jesus' words during the Last Supper, therefore, transcend the specific context in which they were spoken. They become a fertile field for debates and reflections that continue to resonate in the hearts of the faithful, uniting people of different generations around a central message of love, sacrifice, and hope. At the Last Supper, the food and drink served are not mere dinner items. They are loaded with symbolism and meaning. Bread, for example, represents the body of Christ, which will be offered as a sacrifice. This gesture of breaking bread is an act of union and sharing, where Jesus invites his disciples to become part of his mission. Bread, a staple food in Jewish culture, takes on a new dimension when it is associated with sacrifice and eternal life. Wine, in turn, symbolizes the blood of Christ, which will be shed for the redemption of humanity. The choice of these elements is not random. They are part of the Jewish Passover tradition, where wine is used to celebrate liberation. Thus, Jesus transforms a traditional rite into a new meaning, establishing a deep connection between his message and Jewish roots. In addition to the spiritual aspect, the symbolism of food and drinks is also a reflection on everyday life. Jesus was meeting with his friends and disciples, sharing moments of joy and sadness. The act of eating and drinking together reinforces the idea of community and fraternity, something that would become a pillar of the new Christian faith. The Last Supper thus becomes a model of coexistence and love for others. The symbolism of food also makes us think about the simplicity of Jesus' message. In a world full of complexities, he chose to use common elements to convey profound truths. This choice makes the message accessible, inviting everyone to participate, regardless of their social status or religious knowledge. Thus, when we look at the symbolism of the foods and drinks of the Last Supper, we realize that they not only illustrate Jesus' message, but also create a space for reflection on life, sharing, and love. These elements become an invitation to communion, uniting people around a greater purpose that transcends time and space. When we talk about the Last Supper, it is impossible not to mention the famous painting by Leonardo da Vinci. This masterpiece, created in the 15th century, has been the subject of many analyses and interpretations over the years. The details in the painting are fascinating and reveal a lot about the artist's intention. Each disciple at the table is portrayed with different expressions, reflecting their personalities and emotions in such a meaningful moment. The way Leonardo positioned Jesus at the center of the composition is also an important point, emphasizing his central role in the narrative. Additionally, the way the light falls on the apostles' faces creates a sense of drama and intensity. It is interesting to note that the expression of Judas Iscariot, who is holding a bag of coins, is especially dark, symbolizing his imminent betrayal. Some scholars believe that this choice of expressions is not only artistic, but also an invitation to reflect on human nature and the weaknesses we all face. Another intriguing aspect is the possible hidden symbolism in the work. Some critics suggest that the apostles' disposition may represent different characteristics or ideas, such as doubt, faith, and betrayal. This type of analysis leads us to consider that art can contain deeper messages that go beyond aesthetics, challenging the observer to explore the complexity of human relationships and spirituality. In addition to Leonardo, other works depicting the Last Supper, such as those by Salvador Dali and Tintoretto, also offer unique interpretations. Each artist brings their own vision and historical context, enriching the narrative of the Last Supper. This dialogue between different artistic representations helps us understand how the image of Jesus and his disciples evolved over time. These diverse interpretations show us that the Last Supper is not just a historical event, but an ongoing source of reflection and inspiration. As we analyze these works of art, we are led to question not only what happened that night, but also what these stories mean to us today. In the Last Supper, the disciples are not just passive figures, but rather complex characters with their own stories and motivations. Each of them represents different aspects of humanity, from loyalty to betrayal. The dynamic between them is fascinating and reveals a lot about Jesus' message. For example, Peter, often seen as the leader of the apostles, demonstrates an intense devotion, but also a vulnerability that makes him human. Judas Iscariot, on the other hand, is often the focus of the discussion. His betrayal is one of the most controversial points in the narrative. Some interpretations suggest that Judas acted out of financial desperation, while others point to a deeper reason, perhaps a belief that he was fulfilling a necessary role in the divine plan. This duality of their motivations raises questions about good and evil, and how the choices we make can be influenced by internal and external factors. The interactions between the disciples are also revealing. The way they react to Jesus' words during the supper reflects their personalities and their individual understandings of the message he was conveying. The moment when Jesus talks about the betrayal of one of those present provokes different reactions, showing how each person deals with tension and uncertainty. These reactions help deepen understanding of what Jesus was trying to teach. Furthermore, the way the disciples position themselves in relation to Jesus at the table is symbolic. Some lean closer, demonstrating closeness and understanding, while others appear distant, reflecting the complexity of their relationships with the Master. This physical arrangement can be seen as a metaphor for the spiritual relationship that each one had with him. Studying the dynamics between the disciples at the Last Supper allows us to better understand the depth of Jesus' message. It's a reminder that even in moments of great significance, human emotions and social interactions play a fundamental role in how we interpret and experience these spiritual events. The Last Supper is not just a historical moment. For many, it is an event loaded with mystical and spiritual meanings. Several esoteric traditions associate supper with profound revelations about the nature of the human being and the divine. The idea that Jesus shared such an intimate moment with his disciples is seen as a representation of the spiritual union between the human and the divine. This meeting is considered an invitation to reflect on each person's own spiritual search. Christian traditions often talk about transubstantiation, where the bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. For mystics, this transformation goes beyond the physical. It symbolizes the possibility of spiritual transformation that each individual can achieve by connecting with the sacred. This act of communion is seen as a return to a state of oneness with God, something many seek on their spiritual journeys. Furthermore, the arrangement of the elements on the supper table is also a topic of interest. Some scholars point out that the way food and drinks are organized may have hidden meanings. For example, the presence of bread and wine is not just a detail, they symbolize the spiritual nourishment that is essential for anyone seeking a mystical path. This idea is echoed in several spiritual philosophies, where food is seen as a means of elevating consciousness. Another mystical aspect of the Last Supper is the presence of Judas Iscariot. Many believers and esotericists argue that Judas's betrayal is not just an act of disloyalty, but a necessary part of the divine plan. This view suggests that in the spiritual quest, pain and suffering also have their place, as they are catalysts for transformation and enlightenment. Thus, Judas becomes a complex figure, a symbol of the shadows that everyone faces in their spiritual trajectories. Esoteric interpretations of the Last Supper also extend to other traditions, such as Kabbalah and Gnosticism. Both offer visions that highlight the importance of self-knowledge and the search for inner truth. For these traditions, supper is a starting point for deeper reflections on the duality of life, good and evil, and the search for enlightenment. This interconnection between different spiritual philosophies creates a rich tapestry of meaning that continues to inspire and guide those who seek a deeper understanding of the human experience and the divine. As the lights go out at the Last Supper, the true meaning of Jesus' words echoes in our hearts. The table, full of symbolism, hides more than just bread and wine. What was really at stake in that historic moment? Could it be that the messages he left behind were distorted over the centuries? Many scholars believe that Da Vinci's painting, with its intriguing figures, reveals secrets that few know. What can we learn from the disposition of the apostles? And what about the chalice? Could he be the key to hidden knowledge that has been kept secret? And what if I told you that Jesus' words that night could have an even greater impact on our lives than we imagine? What did he really want to teach us about love, betrayal, and redemption? The answers are in front of you, waiting to be discovered. Are you ready to dive deeper into this search for hidden truths? So stick with us, because the mystery of the Last Supper could be just the beginning of a fascinating journey. What else could be hidden in the pages of history? Let's figure it out together.